ना ध्यान रखना प्लीज के मुझे पावर बैंक जल्दी से दे दे, मेरा फोन बंद हो जाएगा।
Can anybody hear me? Okay, so it's 9:11 right now. I think we should start. So welcome to OET speaking session by Medicos Republic. I am Dr. Zarmeen Shahid, and I'm here today with Dr. Zara Taki to discuss about the structure of the OET speaking subtest, the assessment criteria used by the examiners, the type of language you should use in the role play, and then lastly, the breakdown of a speaking sample to help you figure out how to go on about when you receive a role play card. So let's start with the structure. So structure. The OET speaking subtest is delivered individually in a separate area. It is usually on the different floor than the area where you give the other parts of the OET, the reading, listening, and the writing part, but usually in the same building. There will be different cabins in which you will be queued outside, and you will have to wait for your name to be called out, and then you go in. So once you go in, there will be a person sitting in front of you. That will be the interlocutor. He or she is the one who is going to be conversing with you. They are not your assessor. Assessors are usually two trained assessors. They usually assess through your recording. So your conversation with the interlocutor is recorded, and two trained assessors then mark your recording. So neither of the minimum of these two trained assessors, they don't know the other one's score, and they don't know what score you have achieved in any of the other subtests, like the writing part or the listening part or the reading part. So they look for candidates' response to the particular tasks that are written on the role play card, and they use specific criteria that reflect the demands of the communication in the healthcare setting, how you should be speaking to a patient or a family member of the patient in a healthcare setting. So I'm going to be discussing that as well in the second part. So time, it usually it takes approximately 20 minutes for this whole conversation to take place. That includes a warm-up conversation once you enter the cabin, after the identity check, when you show your passport or you announce your name and all. After that, you will have a 2 to 3 minutes of a warm-up conversation, and in which the interlocutor may ask you, what do you do for a living, about your job role, etc., and then he will give you your first role play. So the role plays are 5 minutes each, and they will give you the role play cards one after the other, where you are the doctor and interlocutor gets the role of a patient or a family member of the patient. I hope that this is clear so far, the structure of the exam. So usually the role play cards are in the format of this. This is the OET sample test number 1 from the official OET site. The candidate card is on the right side. You will get this part of the card, and the left part of the card called the role play card. This is in the hands of the interlocutor, and they will play the part of the patient. So you will be given the setting, and then what the setting, and something about the patient, and then the task that you have to complete during those 5 minutes. Next. So these are the 4 common questions that usually come to our mind when we think about OET speaking. Can you write on the role play cards? So yes, you can definitely write on the role play cards. You can highlight or underline specific parts of the tasks that you want to bring out for yourself. So that you can look at them again. Sorry. So here, for example, find out what is worrying the patient. If you want to first part of the task, find out what is worrying the patient and be reassuring. If you want to highlight or underline any part of this task, you can do it. So second question usually is, can I look at them during the role play? Yes, you can. You can refer to the card at any time during the role play. You will not be asked to give them back once you see them. You will have the role play card in your hands for all 5 minutes. So what if I don't finish all the tasks in time? Okay, so this is a little bit complicated. You will not be penalized for not completing all the elements or tasks on the role play card. However, if you complete more tasks or the elements, the more evidence you are providing to the assessors of your ability to communicate in spoken English. So you will get more marks. I hope that this makes it clear. What if I make a mistake and I realize it on the spot? So if you have done a mistake, if you have given out information wrong, or if you have done some mistake in pronunciation or in grammar or anything, you can just correct it. You can just say sorry. If you have made a mistake in giving out information, you can just apologize and change it at that point, or just take a pause and correct yourself, like in a natural conversation, like maybe I am doing, or maybe like Zara will do in the next part of the conversation, in the next part of this session, like I did right now. Okay, so let's talk about the assessment criteria. So the assessment criteria is, it can be divided into 2 segments, the linguistic criteria and then the clinical communicative criteria. The linguistic criteria deals with the language, the English language, and the clinical communicative is how you use that language to communicate in a clinical setting. So they have both of these have further parts, or you can say criteria. So linguistic linguistic segment of assessment criteria has 4 further criteria: the fluency, intelligibility, appropriateness of language, and resources of grammar and expression. Let's talk about intelligibility first. So this is your ability to produce a comprehensible speech, which means that what you are saying should be easily understandable by the candidate, by the interlocutor or the assessors even. You should be able to use proper pronunciation and use the ups and downs of your tone accurately. And use selective stress. Selective stress is used when you want to stress upon something. For example, if you want to stress upon taking medication for a person who has been having multiple angina attacks, and you should not mumble and you should not use slurred speech. Your speech should be loud and clear, and you should produce a natural English sentence rhythm. Okay, so one thing is important. Many people are very much confused or concerned about is your accent. Accent has usually what is it's something is called L1 accent, is language 1 accent, which is our first language accent that comes on to our second language. If my first language is Urdu, some of that accent is gonna come into my English as well. So this is normal, and the main point to consider is the extent to which this causes strain to the listener. Your L1 accent or your language one accent should not be so much powerful that the other person is unable to understand you. Otherwise, it's completely normal to have that background accent. So the second thing is fluency. You should be able to make a speech at a normal rate. It should not be too fast, too low, too slow, and it should be continuous with natural pauses and hesitations. You should not have pauses where you are searching, obviously searching for words and structures, especially when usually what happens is we are trying to memorize a learned script that is very much detectable by the trained assessors who are listening to your audio. So try to refrain from those. So the third one is appropriateness of language. That means using expressions that are understandable by the lay person, especially in explaining the technical procedures or medical conditions. Like if you are explaining hyperthyroidism, you should be able to communicate it to a lay person that a thyroid is a gland which is present in front of your neck and etc. Like that, like we do usually here in Pakistan or in any other country, how we explain medical conditions or procedures in layman language to our um, patients. Okay, so you should be able to adapt a tone of voice that is suitable to the situation. That means that, for example, if you are explaining the importance of medicine compliance with a patient with a major heart condition, so you should be able to emphasize on that, saying that it is very, very important that you take these medications regularly. So that this is using your tone of voice to emphasize on something. It is very important that you take these medications regularly. Okay, so the fourth one is resources of grammar and expression. So, so it is very important to have a wide range of vocabulary and a good control of grammatical expressions. You should be able to paraphrase, as I have told you in the writing part as well. Paraphrasing is very, very important. As you have seen in the role play cards, that the tasks are already there. You have to paraphrase them, not use them as it is. And you have to be able to make long sentences using cohesive devices like however, moreover, in addition to, etc. like these. And you should be able to understand and use idiomatic idioms accurately. For example, so far so good, under the weather, and this is getting out of hand, or your condition is getting out of hand, or if some other expressions of idioms like these, because the interlocutor will be using these because these are commonly used in English language. So next up is the clinical communicative criteria. So it has further 5 parts. So they are relationship building, understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective, providing structure, information gathering, and then information giving. So let's take a look at the further at these 4 criteria. I think these are more relatively more important than we have discussed previously, the linguistic criteria. So first of all is relationship building. So relationship building is about the rapport formation. This is usually can be done or can be started right from the beginning when you greet the patient, and then you introduce yourself, and then clarifying the patient's name, and then clarifying your role in their care. For example, I can give you a small sample of how to introduce yourself. Hi, my name is Dr. Shahid. I am one of the junior doctors in the clinic today. Can you confirm your name for me, please? So the interlocutor says, my name is John. I will say, nice to meet you, John. How can I help you today? So this can vary according to different situations or different settings of the role play cards, but usually it goes like this. So it is very important to demonstrate an attentive and respectful attitude, especially towards potentially embarrassing and distressing matters. For example, if someone tells you, "My father died of this condition," you should say, "Sorry to hear about your father." And then adopting a non-judgmental approach, that is again being very sensitive to the responses of the patient. You should not be judgmental or being mocking or things like that, which may be uncomfortable to the patient. You should not use such language or any gestures or that we call the non-verbal cues. So showing empathy for feelings, predicament, and emotional state of the patient, this is very, very important, and this can be done non-verbally as well. But it is very important to use the verbal signs, verbal empathy. Verbal empathy means that you have to show that in your words that you are having empathy for your patient. This makes it more explicit by specifically naming and appreciating the patient's emotions or predicament. For example, if someone is saying again and again, "I've been having this condition for so long, I've been having nausea, vomiting, I am so distressed," things like that. If the patient is saying that, then you should bring it out in your conversation and say that, "I can see that this is very distressing for you," or no, or use words like, "I can understand that this must be very difficult for you. I can see this is a difficult situation for you." Use your verbal empathy. Don't just use non-verbal cues like using like tuning down your smiley face or things like that. Use verbal empathy because your recording, your audio recording is being assessed, not your video recording. Then indicators of understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective. So it is very, very important to elicit and explore the patient's ideas, concerns, and expectations. No, usually we call this in PLAB 2 ICE, ideas, concerns, and expectations. And believe me, this will go on and help you in PLAB 2 as well, because these are very, very important part of doctor-patient conversation in the UK. And this will help you gain marks in every exam from here on out. Trust me. So it is very important that you to know that every patient has a unique experience of their sickness, and they will have different feelings, different thoughts, and different concerns about them. And it is important to ask them or look for those concerns or ideas or expectations in your conversation. And it is very important to pick up the patient cues, again the same thing, and relating to the explanation to elicited ideas, concerns, and expectations. The patient has told you your ideas, concerns, and expectations. Now you have to reflect them back to them to make them understand that you know what they are trying to say. So then C is indicators of providing structure. Providing structure means that your consultation with the patient should be organized, and it should be purposeful, and should be ordered logically. And this is very important because you have to balance out the need of the patient, and also you have to organize the whole task as well. Sometimes the patient will bring out some questions in the middle of something else. You are going to have to you're going to have to sort that out, how to keep the order of the consultation and how to satisfy your patient's concerns as well. So signposting changes in the topic, that is very, very important. And we have discussed this in the writing as well. It is very important when we are talking about very different ideas. Usually the role play cards are about gathering information and giving out information, and different parts of the conversation have different things to be discussed. So it is very important to signpost them. For example, if you are talking about a specific part of management, for example, lifestyle changes, then you can start by saying, okay, let's discuss about the lifestyle changes that you can adopt to help your condition. So this will help your patient understand where the interview is going and why it's going there. Then using organizing techniques in the explanations. Organizing techniques usually involve categorizing different information together and labeling them and chunking the information together, using clear gaps in between the sections before proceeding, and then repeating them if necessary if the patient is not understanding them. This is called grouping them together so that it is easily understandable by the patient, because we are going to be talking about a large piece of information, and this sometimes can be confusing for the patient. You should forget that the person sitting in front of you is not your patient. They are your patient. Just talk to them like your patient, like you do in your usual healthcare setting. Think of them as a layman person who doesn't understand a thing about medicine. Okay, then indicators of information gathering. Information gathering means they first of all facilitate the patient's narrative with active listening. Information gathering when you are taking history, sort of. When you are taking information from the patient, why they came here, what are their concerns, and etc. In that information gathering, you should be an active listener and minimize interruptions when the other person is telling you what they are feeling or what they are experiencing. And using initially open questions appropriately, moving to closed questions. Start with the open questions always, because sometimes you do not have to ask many questions if you start with open questions. This is a very basic thing that we usually learn in our final year medicine. Okay, so active listening techniques. Some of the active listening techniques I can give you is first of all, you should always use silence and pausing when the other person is telling you something, and you should use verbal encouragement. Verbal encouragement means expressions like I can see that, okay. These are some words that show the other person that you are listening to them. And use repetition and echoing means that repeat the words, important words that they are saying. For example, chest pain. I have been having chest pain, doctor. Oh, chest pain. Okay, now move on to the next open question. For how long and all that. Then paraphrasing and interpretation, such as if the patient is showing you distresses, and if they are showing non-verbal cues of distress, and if they are in deep thinking and things like that, you can say, for example, are you thinking that when John gets even more ill, you won't be strong enough to nurse him at home by yourself? If the patient is giving you responses, that indicates that he is worrying about such thing. Okay, so the fourth indicator of this information gathering is not using compound questions / leading questions. This is very, very important. Compound questions are questions like, for example, have you ever had chest pain or felt shortness of breath? So this is a compound question where you are asking for chest pain and shortness of breath in one question. So the person is sitting in front of you is confused what to answer first and what is more important, one or the other. So it is very, very important not to use compound questions like these. This will save you some time, but this will not be good for your marking. Then the leading questions. Sometimes a leading question can include an assumption in the question, which makes it more difficult for the person sitting in front of you to answer. For example, you have lost weight, haven't you? This is assuming in your leading questions that the other person has lost weight. He doesn't know what to say to you. Oh yeah, maybe 1 stone. His response may be like this. Okay. The fourth is clarifying statements which are vague or need amplification. So here is a part, the question I mentioned earlier, that a lot of people have in mind. If you are unable to understand what the interlocutor is saying to you, you can always ask them again for amplification. Amplification means further details or to clarify their statement. For example, if they are saying something like, "I've been feeling chesty," so if you do not understand the word chesty, you can always ask them, "I'm sorry, can you tell me what exactly do you mean by chesty?" Okay, chesty usually means they have been having a lot of cough. Okay, so fourth indicator is summarizing information to encourage corrective slash invite further information. So this is just to give them a brief information, a brief idea as to what they have done, what they have said so far, and if you and that you have understood that all the information that they have given you. So you can just always signpost like, "So to summarize, you have been having nausea and vomiting for the last 2 days." So you should always summarize at the end of information gathering. Then let's move on to information giving. So there are 5 indicators for information giving as well. Um, Establishing initially what the patient already knows. So when you are giving out information, it is always important to establish what he knows already, because this will save you a lot of time. For example, if the patient is diagnosed with myocardial infarction, you should always ask him what does he already know about myocardial infarction. So this will allow you to determine at what level to give information and how much to give information and what information the patient needs, and the degree to which your view of the problem differs from that of the patient. This will enormously help you. Then number 2 is pausing periodically when giving information, using the response to guide next steps. So you should pause and check for their understanding. This is usually called chunking and checking. This will help you in the PLAB2 exam as well, because this helps the healthcare professional give out the pieces in small information, then they pause and then they check for the understanding before proceeding. So if the person sitting in front of you is unable to understand the information that you have given them, you can repeat them, because this will satisfy the patient more that you are very concerned about their understanding. Then the third part is encouraging the patient to contribute reactions and feelings. Again, the same thing, chunking, then taking a pause and then checking. You are pausing and then checking their responses, and this will allow the patient to contribute their reactions or the feelings that they are feeling at that time. It is best again done by giving small gaps in between the information that you are giving. Then checking whether the patient has understood the information, same as checking and checking. And then discovering what further information the patient needs. Always in the end, ask to discover what other information the patient needs. For example, you can say, "Is there anything else on your mind? Anything else I can help you with?" Again, this is a type of questions that can elicit these ideas, concerns, and expectations that are very important, not only in OET speaking, but also in PLAB2. This will help you throughout your career from here on out if you are looking for a career in the UK. So this is all from me. So we're gonna take a 2 to 3 minute break, and right now it's 9:38. We are going to come back at 9:40, and Zara will take over from here.
Hi, I'm Zara, and I'm going to cover the language in the role play. So the main concern we all have after knowing the speaking subtest basics is that how should we start the conversation? What language should be used, and what are the key points to nail the task? So it seems quite difficult, as we all know, but if we follow some simple rules, it is pretty easy actually. So for you guys, I have summed up some example and templates for you just to understand how you should initiate and how you will continue it further, your conversation. But remember one thing, that never memorize dialogues. It will not look natural. Just take an idea from this session and do practice with your fellows as much as you can. Only then you will be able to nail it completely as well as naturally. As you get your test, always start with the reading the role play carefully, keeping your eye on setting and what you have been asked to do. Okay. Firstly, the thing is this: a lot of problem occurs whenever we are handed over the role play, we don't read it properly what we are asked to do. So here the problem is when we are actually running out of time, we are not following the role play, and because the interlocutor, he is following the role play, and if you are not, you will just mess up the whole conversation. So next is, firstly, I'm going to talk about is greetings. So prepare yourself and start with good greetings. So I have put some examples, and that are good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever the time is, according to that, you can change this. So next line is nice to see you again. Thanks for coming to see me today. I'm pleased to meet you. So here I would like to clear one thing. It's good to see you. You can use any which you might suitable for you according to the situation. Next up would be a good and clear introduction. So basically, I used to divide the intro lines into my name, making the patient understand that I am the attending doctor, and getting to know his or her name with his or her well-being. So there are four things. My name, I'm telling him that I'm the attending doctor, and going to get his name and his well-being as well. So the examples would be like, my name is Zara Taki, or I can use I am Dr. Taki. If I'm going to put my surname there, like Taki, so I'll be using doctor with surname, and I'll be saying I am Dr. Taki. But if I am putting my whole name there, I would be using a sentence like, my name is Zara Taki. So second thing is that I told you earlier, I'm the attending doctor. So I would say, I'm your doctor today, or I'm looking after you today. The third one, I'm going to get the name. Could you give me your name, please? May I know your name, please? And fourth one will be, how are you today? Take patient name here. Like if patient tells you that his name is John, always go like, John, how are you today? This thing always create a rapport, and it makes the conversation very smooth. Okay, so now let's discuss that how we open up a conversation. It's pretty easy. We do this almost all the time in our house job and in our final year. So we just have to do this in English now. So I'm going to quote some examples like, what brings you along here today? What brought you here today? What seems to be the problem? Okay, so what brings you along here today and what brought you here today are more polite than what seems to be the problem, but it can also be used according to what you remember at that time and what suits you on your language. How can I help you, and what seems to be bothering you can also be said in this type of conversation. Here I would like to actually clear one thing. If you already know the patient, and or if that is the second visit, in your it could be written in your role play that it's a second visit, or it's the regular patient that you see in your general practitioner clinic. So you can always say, has everything been good so far? What made you to come today? Okay, tell him that you know him. Next are some examples of how to extract the information. So first one would be, I would like to ask you a bit more about. So we are done with the greetings, we're done with the introduction, we're done with the opening sentences. Now the patient has told us about his chief complaint. So now we are actually going to start the information. We like to know more about it. It's our task. So we'll go like, I would like to ask you a few questions. Or like, according to your history, you have suffered a heart attack. Could you tell me a little bit more about it? If patient is here to get her results, because sometimes what happens, That scenario is like that patient is here to get the results of some test. Sometime patient is here first time for some complaining of some heartache or anything else, like first complaint. So you have to change your conversation. You have to mold your dialogues according to the setting you have been presented to. So if patient is here to get her results of some test ordered earlier, then appropriate sentence to extract the information would be, John, before we talk about your results today, could you describe your symptoms for me once again? So I would have been in better place to explain you your results. Okay, so just extract a little bit background information and then start telling about the results written on the role play. Okay, so next is clarify. So what are the templates related to the clarify conversation? You are actually telling the patient that if you miss something, just to tell the patient that you have to point out. So I am quoting some examples like, point out if I missed anything. Could you please describe a little more? Do you get these symptoms daily or on some days of a week? If you're not clear about something, if you want a little more extra detail, if you want a little more clarification, you can ask in this way. Okay. So next, the next slide, it would be the conversation regarding the patient chief complaint. Okay. So you have talked to the patient and the patient is complaining of something, and he has told you already that he is having some chest pain or he is having some muscle ache. So these are the routine questions we normally ask in our daily practice. We're just going to go in English now. So ask about the location. So what are the questions that would be related to location? Where is the sensation? If it is some burning sensation, like in a diabetic patient. If it is some heartache or muscle ache, where does it hurt? Can you pinpoint it for me? For duration, you would go like, how long have you had it? Since when you are having it? For severity, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? 1 being the slightest and 10 being the most severe pain you ever had. Could you describe its severity? Could be a simple language as well. And next up would be associations. These are all history points actually. You can always add up and always subtract any of the point if you think the time is running out. Okay, now let's discuss the history questions. They will keep changing scenario to scenario and also according to the task command. So always have a eye on that as well. So history questions could be about the family history, the surgical history, the psychiatric history. It should be related to the scenario. Always ask the relevant history. It's actually asking something about relevant to the disease actually help you to have build a conversation, because interlocutor is not a doctor. He's just following the commands given to him on the task. So don't go astray of the task that you have been commanded. Have either of your parents had any serious problem? Has anyone in your family had cancer? Do you have any relatives who have had a similar problem? If you are extracting some sort of surgical history, you could have always asked, have you ever undergone any sort of operation? You can always change this according to history you want to extract, like I told you earlier. So next in the slide, we have as examination. So as per the history structure, so examination would be the next one. Wait a minute, guys. Okay, so examination would be next, but keep in mind sometimes in some scenario, you might not need all of this. Always read the task carefully and go by the command as I've told you earlier. I would like to perform some relevant examination. I would like to check your chest, heart, or anything that is causing the problem to the patient. I would like to take your observation. So what are the observations? Observations are mostly blood pressure, temperature, pulse rate. So we can use the word observation instead of these. Next is diagnosis. Diagnosis is always an important step, and delivering it is a little difficult task. If you haven't went through any investigation before, always use probably or possibly. Patient won't understand the term provisional diagnosis, so don't use it. So I have put up some templates like, well, based on your history and examination that I have done, I believe that you have this. Sometimes you have investigations on your role play cards. So you can go like, the X-ray shows that you are suffering from this disease. So delivering an insidious diagnosis like something like cancer would be little different, but I have covered it later in the session in Breaking Bad News. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes scenario come in exams stating patient is here to collect the result. In this situation, revealing investigations result would be different. So it will be like, based on your investigations, I have concluded that I have this thing on my mind. I would like to run some investigation to make sure of diagnosis once the investigations are not given. This would be used in that situation. Next up is management. So last in history taking is treatment or management. I think we should start you on atenolol for your blood pressure. I will give you prescription for your headache. I am going to refer you to a psychiatrist. You will always go like this. So next up is reassurance. Reassurance is needed all along the conversation. I have put this in the end to let you know that this thing you shouldn't forget, and it will be there during the whole conversation. I can understand your concern. Rest assured, this is quite common condition. I'm sure you won't have any more trouble. Okay, so before taking a leave, you have to go for the feedback. Does this sound reasonable, acceptable plan to you? Do you have any more question in your mind? Do you have any more concerns, particular concerns in your mind? You can always ask. Is there anything particular you were expecting from this consultation? These are all the feedback questions. Feedback questions always form the rapport, and they give you a room to present your grammar, your fluency in a better way, that you can have a very smooth conversation, a fluent conversation. Okay, so next I have put all these history points to make you guys understand that in speaking, not only your English grammar is what they are looking for, but they are also assessing if you have fluency and coherence in your speech. If you don't show in your audio that you are actually going up and down your voice, it can cost your numbers as well. So now I'm going to explain some specific situation that you might encounter, and these specific situation will actually deal with the fluency and coherence in your speech. Like, you have to empathize with the patient. So now you cannot empathize with the patient in a robotic way or in a robotic tone. There must be some highs and lows. So how will you go like, John, that must have been awful. I know it must be very hard on you. I'm really sorry to hear that. That must be really difficult. You cannot just read it. You cannot just quote it as a dialogue. You have to have some impression in your voice to actually deliver these. While they will judge all these things, your fluency and coherence, while they were assessing your audio recording. So next is the reluctant patient. Patient could show reluctancy in many situations, like he is reluctant to some treatment that is necessary for the patient. So you will tell, John, I understand your concern, but let me explain why insulin therapy is important for you. Because you might encounter some of the scenarios in which patient will be reluctant and will not be willing to accept the appropriate treatment you are offering him. He will be told that you have to be reluctant and you have to deny that you don't want to take this treatment. And in your command, you have been told that you have to make him understand that this therapy or this treatment is better for him. In some cases, they are scared to reveal the information. So how you would go? I can see you are in a lot of distress. I assure you that whatever you will tell me will remain confidential between you and my medical team. So here you are putting all his trust on yourself, that yes, I'm here to help, and you will never ever reveal anything out of his consent. Or sometimes they don't want to get admitted to the hospital because of some commitment to work or their personal commitment. You can always say, I know you have a busy schedule, but your health is our priority. Don't you think it's important for you to stay at the hospital until we exclude all of the risk factors? So always remember your coherence, your fluency, your highs and lows, and your grammar. Next up is checking understanding. Checking understanding will also go side by side with the conversation as your other things that I have told in the history. if you are talking to the patient, and Zameen also told earlier in this session that it is something that is related to check, chunk and check. So is it everything clear so far? Do you have any question in your mind? Do you have some specific concern that you want me to address? Are you understanding me? Don't hesitate to stop me and ask any question you want to. Okay? Be polite in the conversation and always check if the patient is following you. Okay? Sometimes what happens, and you provide so much of extra information that it seems like you are narrating something. It's not, it doesn't seem like a conversation. So you have to be very careful to put it as a conversation in the recording. Okay, so here are some examples of difficult role plays. These are breaking bad news, confidentiality plus consent, angry plus stubborn patient. So firstly, I'm going to discuss the breaking bad news. You can see I have written spikes here. Spikes is the way to break bad news, but it is not essential here, as the goal is to speak fluent and appropriate English according to the task demanding. You must be familiar with spikes in your final year. I'm just going to give you an idea what spikes mean, and then we'll move towards the example that I have quoted. So S means setting a scene that you have to sit down and minimize the distraction. P for perception. What do they know so far? Okay, what do they know so far about their disease? I is invitation. Break down their result in a little time and a little of chunk at a time. K is knowledge. Be direct and use plain language. E, empathy. Keep your calm and coolness. Safety should be your priority. Always, why we always mention this chunk and check, because we cannot just bombard them with the information and they might not be able to handle it, and they might cause them any serious side effects or serious consequences. Last would be summary, that always take care of the patient wishes and summarize the thing that you have told. So I've quoted an example. It is the setting where I am going to do a breaking bad news to my patient, that is John. So doctor says, John, what I would like to tell you is that the cause of your symptoms could be more serious than that you think. Take a pause. And that there is a risk that it is some kind of a brain disorder. Then take a pause. Therefore, I believe that it is very important that we do a few further investigations, including a CT scan and EEG. You can also say a scan of your head if you think that patient won't understand this. Why I'm telling you to take pauses on these all comma and full stop, because patient might jump in and ask a question in between. So you have to give him the time. And if he doesn't ask, then you can go on with the conversation. Patient would say, what kind of brain disorder does doctor? And you will go like, well, we don't know at this stage, but we need to rule out the possibility of epilepsy or a brain tumor. Patient might seem a little distressed to you. Oh no, this is really serious. Well, we don't know at this stage, but you are in here in very good hands and good time, and the first step is to complete our investigation. So you have an idea of how to break a bad news. You have to take pauses, you have to let him assimilate the little information time by time, and you have to give him a little bit time to actually understand and comprehend the situation, and let him ask question as much as he can. So next is confidentiality and consent. I have put a table here. So confidential. So confidential is actually a rule of healthcare system in UK and also in here, but we don't really practice here. Whatever the patient is having any disease, or whatever patient having any condition, you are bound not to tell this condition or any information to any of the person related to patient or any other person without the consent of patient. So you can use the sentences like, the patient has requested that I keep this information confidential, even if the life partner of the patient is asking you questions, because you will come across the scenarios in which the partners and the relatives would ask you question, and they are here on the place of the patient to ask about the situation or maybe condition of the patient. So you have to maintain the confidentiality. Like next is confidentiality agreement. I cannot provide any details about this patient as it would breach our confidentiality agreement. A confidentiality agreement is signed in that situation by the patient and the doctor as well. And next one is disclose. Sometimes John has given me the information in confidence, so I cannot disclose it with his consent. These are all the words and expressions that is related to confidentiality and consent, and then you can use in the way I have put them on this table. Hospital policy is the same, that we cannot reveal any information. Then as a written authorization, please understand I'm not able to provide any details of the result without written authorization from the patient. Unethical. It would be unethical for me to disclose confidential information about Mary without her consent. Legal responsibility. I have a legal responsibility to maintain the confidentiality of the patient. Informed consent. Before we go ahead with the operation, we need to obtain your informed consent in writing. Okay. So this would, you can always go in your own dialogue, making your own dialogues, but these will actually help you that how to put up a conversation when there is a serious matter of confidentiality. Okay, so next up is angry and stubborn patients. So angry and stubborn patients are difficult to deal with. Keep your calm while talking to them and always offer help. You would come across some scenarios in which patient would be a little distressed or maybe stubborn or angry, would be shouting as well. I've been waiting here so far. Nobody's giving me treatment. You are treating me not as good, because these things come in PLAB 2 exams as well. Speaking test of the OAT is just a little basic mock that we come across in PLAB 2 exam. So you would go like, you seem quite upset. Please tell me exactly what are you angry about. I cannot help you if you are not prepared to help yourself. I can see you are very angry, but let me help you by explaining the whole situation. Always keep your calm and try to make him understand. Don't justify that your healthcare worker did right or something. Never justify your mistake. Always be first to say sorry and offer help as a health worker. Okay. So now the last would be breaking down of the speaking sample. So I have put an example here from a test that I have taken from the OAT, OAT site. So the setting is suburban general practice. Like you are a doctor in GP practice. So there is a patient, this is 34-year-old patient is attending because her spouse has noticed a small dark skin lesion on the patient's lower back. The patient is concerned that this represents a skin cancer and requests your opinion on management to diagnose a benign simple pigmented nevus that has probably been present here for many years. So your task is here, explain the diagnosis and reassure the patient, because you know it's birthmark and mole. Explain the treatment and explain the procedure if the lesion is malignant. Okay. So in treatment, here would be some they have already told you what would be the treatment, so you don't have to memorize what condition would come and how you're going to treat it. You will do this in PLAB 2, but here the problem is only that you are going to explain to them what is written or commanded to you in task. So how would we initiate this setting? Okay, so firstly we'll go like with the good greetings. Good afternoon, pleased to meet you. Then would be a good introduction, hi, I'm Dr. Taki, one of the junior doctor here in the department. How can I help you? Or could you please confirm your name, please? Okay, then after getting to know the patient, his well-being, we'll ask, what brought you here in today? The patient will go like, doctor, I have this dark skin lesion on my lower back, and my wife thinks that it is some sort of cancer. I'm very worried. Okay, so you can ask a little bit of questions. Okay, it will also help you to form a rapport with the patient. It will help you to be fluent in your English at that time. It will help you to overcome your nervousness that sometimes we come across in these situations. You'll always go like that, what is this location of the nevus, and since it is formed there, is it growing, or what is the color of it? It is itchy, is it bleeding? Making always asking, in between asking this question, always have things in your mind that you have some specific time for all this. Okay, so sometimes you can cut down short your history according to the time. So now we're going to go on the first task, assuming that I have taken a little bit of history and I have done the examination. So I'm going to go on a diagnosis. So as there is no investigation have been mentioned, I will So John, what I think after taking history from you and doing the examination, I am thinking that it most likely it's a birthmark or it's a mole. No, doctor, it cannot be birthmark. It's not here since forever. It is there for like past 2 years or past 1 year or past 2-3 months. Okay, so it's more likely a birthmark. I have excluded all the risk factor that it could be a cancer, but since then you are very concerned that you're because patient, I have read the card, patient will put up a situation that there is no cancer and there is no birthmark. So I have excluded all the risk factor and lesion under the local anesthetic would be done. Now can you hear me? There was some problem with the net. Okay. So after explaining the diagnosis, always see the task, what is the treatment written there, and always explain in your own language, do your own paraphrasing. Like, John, we have to excise your lesion and it will not cause you any pain because we'll do this in a local anesthetic. We'll be giving you an injection that will numb your area and you will not feel anything. Okay, always explain the thing, explain the all these words, local anesthetic, because patient might not understand this language. So then address the concerns. His concern would be that my father had this nevi and it 2-3 nevi and they turned into cancer and he died of it. So always explain that right now there are no risk factor detected on the examination on the or history, but according to the protocol and the procedure, will excise your lesion, will send them to the lab. Don't say histopathological examination because they won't understand this word. Always go like, we'll send them to lab to check if it is actually cancer or not. Okay, and then you can always tell in the end to reassure, rest assured, if the lesion is malignant, we will refer you to the best healthcare system. We'll refer you to some surgeon for a wider excision, so he can actually treat the disease in the very start or in the basic time. So according to the breakdown of specific speaking sample, one thing that you should keep in your mind, that in all this time in taking history, in taking talking about the diagnosis and investigation, you should be very clear in your mind that you are using the same you are using the right sentences, you are using the right grammar, you're putting up a coherent and fluent speech, and you are actually making a conversation. You are letting the patient to talk, you're addressing his concerns, you're not narrating anything. So if you would do this in in this conversation like this, if you follow these rules, so it will be very easy to nail the task. But lastly, I would suggest that practice as much as you can, because the practice is the key to the speaking test and also the PLAB 2, as it can also make you, as a little practice for PLAB 2 as well. So this is it for today. If you have any questions, you can write up in the chat box and I'll address that. And that's it. Thank you.
You can always ask us questions on our Facebook group, the PLAB Support Group by Medicos Republic. Not hesitate to put up a post or write questions in the comments section of any post as well. Please do that so that we may be able to, we are better able to know what kind of questions are coming to your mind or what kind of information or guidance you people need. Thank you. So we are ending this session now.